Michael Sampson, who many of us have crossed paths with. Michael started organizing in Tallahassee, Florida around education rights, anti-police terror, and anti-war issues. He's one of the co-founders of the Dream Defenders. And Sampson is currently a labor union organizer in the Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland area known as the DMV. He participated in uprisings in Ferguson and in Baltimore following the murder of Freddie Gray. Thank you, Michael.
I'd like to thank y'all for giving me this opportunity to address y'all here at this important event. Kind of like to start off, Mumia Abu-Jamal gave a speech from prison, The War Versus All. It went, the war against us all, this is the war. The war in Iraq isn't the end, it's the beginning of wars to come. All around the world, at the whim of the neocons in the White House, this is the Bush doctrine, come to life. War, war, and more war. War brought to you by big corporate masters who run the show. This isn't just a war on Iraqis or Afghanis or Arabs or even Muslims. It's ultimately a war on us all. That's because the billions and billions that are being spent on this war, the cost of tanks, rocketry, bullets, and yes, even salaries, for the 125,000 plus troops is money that will never be spent on education, on healthcare, on the reconstruction of public housing, or to train and place millions of people who've been displaced from jobs in the past 3 years alone. The war in Iraq is in reality a war against the nation's workers and the poor, who are getting less and less while the big defense industries are literally making a killing. So I wanted to start, hearing that was one of my first growing up in terms of seeing the Iraqi war and the horrible negative effect it's had on the Iraqi people and as well as people here. That was kind of one of my first impressions of connecting the two. Of course, we've seen numbers of Iraqi lives lost, over 150,000 to even 1 million, some projections. And that's horrible in itself. Part of it is sort of using an analysis of us to connect our struggles together. So the struggle of those fighting against oppression in Iraq, how is that connected to me as an African-American person? How is that connected to the struggle of African-Americans fighting oppression here? And quite clearly to me it is. The same tanks, the same police equipment, the same military equipment that the war profiteers are spending billions of dollars on, have gotten rich contracts on, are the same tanks, the same rockets, the same tear gas canisters that are being thrown on the streets of Ferguson and Baltimore, or Milwaukee, or Charlotte, or how many other cities will come. It's all connected to each other. I had the opportunity to spend a week in Ferguson following the murder of Mike Brown, and I saw clearly a people who are upset with the existing order, who are upset with how things were going, and they were in the streets, and they were demanding something better. And then I saw a police state make up lies, say folks were being threatened, and then use tear gas canisters on these peaceful protesters. I myself was tear gassed, and I can remember going to a gas station afterwards and talking to an attendant there about, like I just got tear gassed, it sucks. That person who worked there was actually like, get an onion and something, something, something. And I was like, how do you know this? And he was like, well, I'm from the West Bank. I'm from, like I have this experience, like, and the tear gas they use here is nowhere near the tear gas they use there. So all of these conflicts, the war overseas, the war in Iraq, the wars that occur everywhere are all connected to the war at home that we have here. A war on working class people, a war on black and brown people in this country. The same profiteers, G4S, Home Security, these are the same profiteers who are getting contracts here in the United States to watch public housing where mostly African Americans live. In DC alone, we recently had a case of a private home security firm killing unarmed African American man on the street with no accountability. But why is police becoming privatized in that sense? Why is it that we have private security forces overseas, but we also have these same private security forces in the United States patrolling black neighborhoods? It has to be a connection. And the same people who profit, the same people who are making this policy are the same people who are oppressing us. And it's up to us to kind of see that and understand that. A lot of the work I've done in the past has been sort of educating folks who look like me, and also students, and also folks I come into interaction with every day about how this all connects to each other. We can't see a war overseas and not see a war at home as well. The police military equipment that was said earlier is being purchased in record numbers. That's the same police military equipment that we see being bought by police departments. And it's the same police military equipment that activists in the United States, part of the movement for Black Lives Matter, part of a lot of different movements, the student movements, are fighting to get off their campuses, they're fighting to get out of their cities, out of their police departments. So these movements must connect. There's no rhyme or reason why we have an anti-war movement here that isn't connected to a movement for black freedom here, or a movement for brown freedom here. All these movements must connect, because at the end of the day, the people who profit the most are the war profiteers, are the imperialists. These are the people who colonize Iraq, and the same people who colonize African Americans here. These are the same 1% of folks who make billions of dollars off our sweat and labor as we work, but don't want to give us the right to unionize. These are the same people who, at the end of the day, see as nothing but a number to crunch and as a figure to manipulate and control. It was Amiri Baraka, a famous poet, activist, who wrote, "No nation can be free if it oppresses another." And that's something that we should definitely take into account. How can we claim to be the land of the free, home of the brave, when we're oppressing nations here, domestically, as well as in Iraq or other nations? Or we're participating in the oppressions of nations elsewhere. That's not a policy that promotes freedom. That's a policy that promotes hatred towards us. That's a policy that promotes death. And we've seen so many deaths here and abroad. And we have to see that all connecting to each other. So I kind of want to end on that. I think it's important moving forward. I remember being in Baltimore and seeing the rebellion sort of start there. Like, I was at the mall. I saw it on Twitter. I went to the mall, the Mandela Mall, when I heard kids were throwing rocks at police officers. And then I remember going up there and seeing, kids, throwing rocks at police officers. But this was like hundreds of police officers in police military gear and militarized riot gear. And how in the world can, in this country, we have a situation in which our children are being criminalized and having to see this before they're even of age to buy a pack of cigarettes? So many kids are so many of our children, black children, brown children, are criminalized in this country. And these are the same tactics that are used elsewhere in Iraq. All these struggles must connect in a very succinct way. And we must see that to free a nation elsewhere, we have to free nations here as well. And we have to make sure that that solidarity is shown between the anti-war movement and between the movement for black freedom in this country. So thank you for this opportunity.